Welcome again to an exciting episode of Ignite with Sandy on the Celestial platform. And for those of us who are joining me and my guest today, what is Celestial? Celestial is a platform which is created to bring about that work life balance. Yes, you hear about it all the time, right? Well, my guests, all of them, are really special, and when they come on my show called Ignite with Sandy, the information that they share ignites those neurons in your mind. And they are here to do that. Because you know what? In our everyday life, we're so caught up with doing things, we realize perhaps something's not going too well, something's a little bit off, but we really don't pay attention or focus on it. So my guests are all specialists, and when I bring them on and when they share their information, it brings us into focus, you and me, into focus, like what's happening? How can we know more about this? How can we find a solution to this? So my guest is one of those people who spends an enormous amount of time listening to other people and offering them her expert advice. So, as you know, I never introduce my guests, I always get them to introduce themselves. So, I'm going to bring her on, and she's going to obviously share her name, but more than that, she's going to give us a bit of an introduction of the wonderful work that she does. So, welcome, my dear. Thank you very much for making the time to be on my show, to be my guest. Would you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do, but about your background, education, qualifications, and all of that? Please.
Sounds good. Thank you, Sandy. Thanks for having me. It's an honor. My name is Nino Fincher, and I own ninofit.com. And it's a place for people who feel emotionally and mentally paralyzed to come and quickly renew their mindset, transform the trauma and the blocks that may be hindering them. And that is what I love. I love being able to get a person who has been maybe in depression for 15 years, 9 years, 7 years, all of these people that I have seen in the last year or so, and give them the perspective change that literally transforms how they think, how they view themselves, and to see the possibilities for healing and for change and transformation. So I'm an expert in anxiety and post-trauma uh, disorder. And I work with most of my one-on-one clients either through rapid transformational therapy or through my coaching program, which combines body, heart, mind, and spirit, the four aspects of what makes us human. My main engagement and involvement in UAE has to do with my retreats that I do with the ladies, where we go to the country of Georgia, are removed from the grind of every day, and just be in an environment where you can heal, where you can focus on what needs to be um, reviewed, maybe transformed and changed. And all of my clients who come there and get one-on-one time with me just come back completely refreshed and with a different perspective. So that is one of my favorite things to do.
I think that's extremely exciting. Thank you for sharing that, because I think I'm going to take you up on that
Yeah.
offer, and perhaps come with you and get a bit of rejuvenation, mental rejuvenation myself. But coming back to how you started. So, were you always interested at university? Was it, psychology and all of that, those kind of subjects that interested you?
Yes, I always thought that human mind and human heart were absolutely fascinating. I became a Christian at the age of 17 in my, towards my 18-year-old birthday. And that happened after um, a long time of research and after a very traumatic event where my grandfather died, who I was very, very close with. And so a lot of the search and the questions and the existential kind of vacuum had to be investigated because by nature I'm a person who loves to ask questions, who loves to investigate, and so that is kind of where my journey started. And seeing how much attention the Bible gave to a human heart and the condition of a human heart, as well as the mind, was very interesting. And so all of the uh, information that I read in that book that just worked and made sense was fascinating enough. And then to get into psychology and learn later on with neuroscience and rapid therapy and all of the wonderful discoveries that science made to see why all of that worked was just absolutely fascinating and just kind of solidified my understanding of how human mind and human heart work. And so, yes, I've always been interested in human behavior, human mind, and being able to study that at a master's level, and then later on with all the many different certifications in neuroscience field has been definitely an exciting experience.
So, from what I can gather, this is a never ending field of research, discovery, and whatever else. And I'm sure that when you started out and where you are today, because I know in your line of work, you're always studying, you're always
Yes,
doing research, you're always learning, because
yes.
that's how you can obviously give better advice and guidance to your uh, clients. So, when we started out, the internet and social media and all of that was still not as we see it today,
Right,
right? And
right.
so, do you find that the issues that you were having to help people with, deal with, and what is now, has there been a shift, a change, or that, it's the same old thing?
Well, there's absolutely has been a transformation in the way people perceive themselves, in the way they invest time, in the lack of purpose. I work with that with my clients all the time because people aren't clear on their purpose, their identity, and people don't know how to communicate well anymore. And I think social media has created such a short attention span for most people that they inadvertently try to translate it into everyday relationships, and that's not how a relationship works. Relationship is an investment, and it's a long-term investment, and that you mentioned listening, that is absolutely a thing that is required. And most people feel like they either don't have the skills or capacity or the time or the desire to do that kind of investment. So yeah, it transformed the way we relate to each other and the way we perceive ourselves.
So, is it safe to say that the clients that came to you perhaps 15 years ago uh, had, yes, of course, there are the pressures and the expectations and all of that that goes with a career, with relationships, etc. And some of us handle it better than others. And of
Mhm.
course, there are a lot of traumatic events where people suffer from excessive grief,
Yes,
and they become very close and they don't know how to get out of it. And
right.
obviously, those are things where you experienced it yourself, so you have first-hand knowledge. But
Mm.
when we look at the people today, and I'd like to focus our viewers' attention on the young ones. All right. So I'm talking about teenagers in school leaving, university students, or I would even say kids who are like 10 and 11, with
Mm.
the level of exposure that is inevitable. It's something that you and I can't really control. Do you find a lot of young ones coming to you? Obviously, their parents most probably bring them, where they're having issues related to social relationships, communication, not taking kindly to discipline. I know all teenagers are like that, but I think a
Yeah.
little more now. So, could you just give us a sense of what it is that you are now dealing with when it comes to problems that people face?
Yes. Well, and it's also because as I grew and as I developed, I started out with an amazing therapist when I worked as a with him and his practice as cognitive behavioral therapy practice. He was an expert in marriage and family therapy. And so a lot of what I did there was seeing couples and seeing families. Families was one of my favorite ways to work with people. It's called family systems therapy, and it's essentially a therapy where if somebody brings you a child that's struggling with something, you involve the whole family. So you actually work with an entire family. And that makes so much sense because that is the environment that a child experiences and develops a trauma or hears messages and owns messages that are can be either damaging or provide for their success, etc. But being able to see them in that environment was very helpful. And later on, as I moved on from that and transitioned into rapid therapy, I work with individuals a lot. And it's very interesting, actually, in the last year, probably the majority of the work that I did has been with the teenagers. And almost every single one of them, the presenting problem was anxiety, social anxiety, anxiety for various other reasons, anxiety with the transition, anxiety relationships, dealing with the relationships in the family, etc. So absolutely, I think our young people are struggling, they're suffering. It breaks my heart, and um, unfortunately, they don't know how to think. They are unclear about their identity. They have no confidence and stability in understanding who they are and how they are positioned. And parents struggle. I mean, most parents aren't equipped. There is no book, right, that comes with child rearing, obviously. But I think being able to take the time to listen and actually hear not just what the kid is saying, but what the kid is feeling will move a parent so much closer in being able to solve a problem and guide them to a solution than they think. So, as a parent, I understand we want to immediately fix it and we want to immediately, direct them to something that we know is helpful, but that is not how the process works. Your emotional makeup will always scream louder than your mind and your thought processes. So I think starting with that will save you a lot more time and energy and frustration than trying to reason through things right away.
Very true, very true. What I find very amusing now is everybody talks about family get together, or we're going to spend time as a family. We're going out together, like for a meal or
Yeah.
something. And
Yeah.
invariably, when you observe this family, you notice that everybody is on their phone or iPad.
Yes.
It's like
Yes.
it's in companionable silence. We're all sitting together, passing dishes of food to each other, but that's
Yes.
about it. We're so immersed in our own interesting whatever that we're watching, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
how can we break that? Because you and I both know that perhaps, I mean, I'm certainly old school, right?
Yes.
But I'm
Yes.
also, but I also keep abreast, and
Yeah.
I think parents, number one, from my perspective, need to be open-minded, to be accepting, and be more like companions as opposed to the disciplinarian. Do you think
Yes.
that what that could be a problem that the young ones are facing?
Yes. Absolutely. I'm all about old school, so I'm right there with you, Sandy. And I think that if we could just have a little slot where we collect all the phones before people enter into an environment where they're supposed to be visiting with one another, it would be such a fantastic way to do it, But of course, that's not going to happen, But to have phones in restaurants, it's so interesting. My husband and I went out, and this was in Al because we lived in Al for 15 years,
Okay.
and so we went into this restaurant to see Coop, to see just to visit and have dinner. And when we went out there, um uh, there were probably four or five young men. I imagine they were probably in their 20s, maybe between 20 and 25. And we stayed there and visited and talked for about an hour and a half. The whole time we got there and these men were there and we left and they still were there. The whole time we were there, these guys probably said maybe 4 or 5 sentences between themselves. It was extraordinary. Now, I understand if it's a study group, I understand if it's a project that you're working on together, but to go out socially and to completely be consumed with your phone the whole time you're visiting with your friends is just it's debilitating, and it's such a defeating and an unhealthy way to be that really breaks your heart. And it's true for kids everywhere, a lot of the kids, not everyone, of course, but a lot of the kids that way. So I think, you know, i- anything that we become intentional about, we invest better. And so if we can make a determination or a decision to create a tradition, if we don't have one, about how we visit. And it doesn't have to be at a family dinner. It doesn't have to be uh, done the way our grandparents did it, but to maybe take a walk after dinner with one of your children one day, another child the following day, and leave the phones in the house and just take a quick walk, or take a walk in the morning, or go out for some tea or some coffee with a person that you actually are curious about, and leave the phones in the car or in the house and actually devote that half an hour or 1 hour to being curious about the person that you're interacting with, trying to find out really what is on their heart, what is on their mind, what bothers them, what they're excited about. Just those four things will, I think, open up such an amazing door of an opportunity to actually get to know and build a relationship with the people that you care about, that it would be a simple adjustment that everybody could make, if not every day, at least once or twice a week for a start.
I think it's such a simple thing, but I'm sure extremely hard for someone to put themselves in that new way of doing things. But if if you can share with us what really happens when any person, young or old, spends a considerable amount of time watching something on their phone, their iPad, the television, what happens to our mind? You know,
Hmm.
does it dull the way we think?
Yeah.
What exactly happens? Because you're the expert and you know what's going on in
Yeah.
the brain or the neurons or whatever. So could you just share some of that with us?
Sure. I'd like to absolutely, but I do want to add one thing to your comment about it's hard to do it. If you brush your teeth with your left hand, for instance, Sandy, and I asked you to start brushing them with your right hand, it's going to be very difficult for you initially. But as you continue and make it a repetitive habit, probably after 2 or 3 weeks, it's going to become easier and easier to the point where you don't even think about it anymore. It's just you'll feel ambidextrous, like you can do it with either hand. That's true for any habit, and we develop the habits that matter to us. So unless you decide that something is important and matters to you, then it will remain very difficult. But if you make a commitment to creating some kind of a change and take small enough steps that are achievable and measurable to get to it, then it becomes simpler than you actually think. So, like spending time with your kids, for instance, instead of doing the things the same way, to introduce one tiny change, like I said, to actually do like a one short walk before dinner or before breakfast or after dinner or something. I mean, it'd be harder in UAE because it's so hot, but you can improvise. Um, would be soon become a habit that I think both parties would benefit from. As far as the social media, it it feeds off of dopamine production, and so when we stimulate ourselves and the dopamine is released, it creates a very pleasant immediate response neurologically, and so then you seek after that more, and then you seek after that more, and soon it dulls the senses enough to where you need a lot more of, whether it's viewing social media or alcohol or whatever it is that becomes addictive in order to stimulate what you're trying to get. And that's that response that, lights up the fire in your brain and gets you to that pleasant feeling, even though it's temporary. So the more time we spend on it, the more we require in order to get to that initial feeling that gave us the pleasure. And so that is what people seek. Any addiction really is about people trying to move away from the feeling that is unpleasant to the feeling that is pleasant. And so that is really what happens, whether you're engaged in social media or you go shopping, or people who are addicted to alcohol. It's very unfortunate, but it's the same system for all of
Oh, I
them.
agree. Yeah. So
Mhm.
because I do notice that I mean we're all guilty of what binge watching
Mhm.
uh, videos, serials on Netflix and a whole lot of other
Yep.
things. And as like everything is brought into the food is there and everything is there, and it's just just another episode, and I'll go to sleep, and just another episode,
Yes.
and that's just one thing. But
Yes.
one of the things that I have observed, and it seems to have a rather negative effect, is uh, especially on social media, and I'm talking about Instagram and TikTok and things like that. How that is becoming invasive about our taking away our self confidence, making us feel that we are not good looking enough, we're not sexy enough, and it's nothing to do with being intelligent at all.
Right. Right.
It's
Right.
nothing to do with your accomplishments, whether it's in sport, whether it's in the fine arts, whether it's your grades. It's basically dumbing you down and telling
Mhm.
you unless you are pretty, sexy, hot, etc., young, you are not complete.
Yes.
So how and I'm sure there are a lot of teenagers who have very low self-esteem, and young
Yes.
people as well, because of this constant bombardment. So
Yes.
when they come to you, perhaps their parents have persuaded them to come and see somebody like you. How do you deal with that? How do you get them to open their mind to say, okay, let's look at it from another view?
Yes. Well, yeah, a lot of kids struggle with that, partially, I think, because they don't understand what their identity is. And by that, I mean uh, their intrinsic value. Their intrinsic value is developed as they're growing up, I think, in the home. I mean, if you're a believer, your value comes from uh, it's a transcendent value. God establishes your value, and He says you're priceless in Christianity. I mean, He values you deeply. Um, if you're in the family, being able to have that confidence and comfort of being welcome and accepted and loved deeply and unconditionally can establish a very strong foundation for a kid who is then launched into a school, um, uh, where he may be bullied or she may be bullied or not welcomed in a particular clique and so on. Being able to go home and kind of have the parents or the people who love you reiterate that, um, just because superficially somebody makes that determination about you doesn't take away from what your intrinsic value is. So that's really important. I think a lot of the kids um, also pursue superficial things because, one of the things that has been quite disappointing is the kids don't read very much at all. I mean, adults don't read very much at all, so that's heartbreaking. But even when children select to pursue certain social media accounts or listen to some podcasts, being able to direct them to the things of their interest, but that can add value to it would be really important and essential. For instance, if the girl is concerned about her looks instead of following somebody who um, keeps harping on how you have to keep up with the trends and change your looks all the time, instead of giving them access to um, a physician who also explains how aging works, or how skin um, develops, and how your body changes, to kind of include that as part of that superficial interest that they have, or maybe make that something that a mother and a daughter, or a father and a son, or a parent and a child can discuss together, again, once a week on their walk, would make a big difference. And um, I think again, with the kids that I have worked with, and ones that have had struggles at school, for example, because they felt excluded or not part of a community, helping them understand that the transitions are always difficult and they're temporary, and they have a bigger goal, purpose, and an aim in what they were designed for and where they're going, really makes a difference. So a lot of the work that I do with the young people is kind of reframing their mind towards what is it that you're here for, um, and why, understanding that some of the things that happen to you within seasons are temporary makes a big difference, because we walk through seasons. It's not just a life. It's a life that is made up of seasons. So this is temporary. This is going to end. This is irrelevant. And every single thing that you walk through is going to be a stepping stone to something more interesting, more important, more gaining skills, gaining knowledge, gaining information, and determining whether or not these people are trustworthy or not, and so on and so forth.
Look, the other thing that I have noticed is that uh, some consultants and counselors are very quick to recommend medication, and kids are generally put into this ADD, ADHD. It's like, oh, just like the flu. Oh, he's got ADD, she's got ADHD,
Yeah.
and things like putting them on medication, quite young
Mhm.
people, kids even.
Yes.
So I mean, at the end of the day, it's like a placebo, because if you remove them from that medication, they are supposedly coming back. So they haven't really changed. They haven't made any attempt to improve. And parents,
Yes.
perhaps, parents
Yeah.
also use it. Oh, they're feeling this. Give them this. They're feeling this. So just
Mhm.
give them this tablet and they'll be
Yes.
fine. But
Yes.
I personally feel, again, old school, that
Yes.
these are just placebos, and you cannot have somebody on, for example, Ritalin of their
Hmm.
whole life. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. We are designed to heal and recover. When you get a wound, your body immediately starts working on repairing it. And we have systems built in to change and transform and renew. I mean, the brain does that, your cells do that. It's quite incredible. And so it's an unfortunate fact that let me say that medication absolutely works, and it's an important part of what we have available today. But when that becomes an immediate go-to, when and people bypass all of the other options that may have a solution without having to resort to it, I think it's just a quick fix that doesn't provide the outcomes that are positive and helpful long term. And labeling then becomes such a powerful attachment that people hold on to, that they later on make it their identity. One of the things that I often tell my clients who come to me, and almost inevitably every single one of them says, my anxiety has been this and that and the other, or my migraines, or my problems, or my depression. And I say to them, the minute you call it mine, you literally tell your brain to own it. So be very careful to not frame the things that you don't want as yours, because your mind literally decides that this is something that belongs to you and we cannot lose it or get rid of. And it's amazing how profound the communion between your mind and your heart and your body are. Your mind um, dictates, the processes, your thought processes then create chemical response in your emotional and chemical response, and your body follows with whatever it knows to follow, because that is the last thing to respond to whatever is going on with the thinking. And so um, it's frustrating because parents struggle because they don't have time and they don't have the knowledge, and they want to see their child well. They want to see the solution to the problem, but sometimes some problems require time and require attention that can be very draining and exhausting. But in the long term, they can be a lot more helpful than putting a band-aid on the wound that is a medication, unfortunately.
Yes, I think you put it very well, a band-aid. It's a very temporary solution.
Yeah.
So, one last question I have for you. You talked about the retreats that you do for women, right?
Yes.
So, what are the kind of women that come on those retreats, and what are the programs or the workshops that you
Yeah.
offer? Because I obviously having your kind of expertise and experience, you immediately know what what women are lacking or what they're looking for in order to become healthy and happy. So, can you just shed a little light on what are the kind of issues that these women have?
Yes. So I've had in the last, I did a workshop actually several months ago, and in this workshop, I had three ladies who all lost a child at different ages of their lives. Um, One child was 3 months old, the other child was 16 years old, and the third one was 17, and it was heartbreaking. And so being able to grieve is so important. But there are cultures that don't allow for the period of grief that your body and heart and your mind require in order to really process it. Or oftentimes families don't know how to help in that scenario. In fact, most people don't really know how to help uh, people when they're grieving. They try to encourage them and show them focus them on what's positive, but your body and your heart and your mind need to process what they have to process. And so that period of time, or the freedom to feel what's necessary for you to feel in order to move out of the stuck state and past the period where you can start breathing and healing and not be overwhelmed by whether it's grief or a trauma that happened to you, is what that retreat provides. It's literally like uh, taking a breath in the morning, or if you wake up and deep breathing is your routine, it really transforms how you take on the day. And so that retreat is just like a fresh breath, is how I like to think of it for a lot of the women who are completely stressed out with the responsibilities, or some of the women who come are CEOs and women who run businesses, and that is a perpetual constant state of having to make decisions and having to take responsibility and being accountable, not just for yourself, but for the people that work with you. And so being able to literally physically remove yourself out of that environment for 2 or 3 days, being able to breathe, do some breathing exercises, focus on really how your mind, body, and heart work and how to coordinate that in order to create the responses that are healthier and less stressful. Being able to do coaching with me one on one, which all of my clients get when they come to the retreats, and um, just enjoy the extraordinary environment with beautiful views and the beautiful food, and just in a place that is truly refreshing and quiet and peaceful. It transforms the way you can come back and renew yourself in what you do.
I can quite agree on that. And because I myself do trips to India, and it's all about getting away from all the comfort, the creature comforts, the
Yes,
communication.
yes,
You don't have internet. What do? You don't
right.
have a so-called comfortable bed, and really fresh, lovely smelling linen,
Yes.
and not a nice, not a really nice toilet where you would have a shower, or maybe you just have
Yes,
to use the bucket and the mug. And then you
yes,
think to yourself, there's so much hoo-ha, I can't do this, I'm used to this, I have to have this, and then you realize you don't have to have any of it. So you come back
that's
feeling
true.
really good. Yeah, it's and
Yes.
actually, all
Well,
of
and
us, yeah.
I'd like to say that the ladies that come with me, they have a nice bed and they have a nice amenities. 'Cause that's nice. Why make it worse? Well, unless we absolutely have to. But I agree with you. I mean, it's amazing how resilient and how capable we are of just living with what is absolutely necessary. And it changes your perspective and reframes how you perceive yourself. It actually even makes you proud of remembering that, my goodness, I don't need to be wasting my efforts on something that is completely useless a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think most of us lead a pretty superficial life, and we're into the all the superfluous stuff, uh, and I think as parents, as older people who have young ones at home, sometimes we're also responsible for the way they behave, because
Yes,
we have to have this, or you have to have that, and you shouldn't do this, and I'll give you this, and to give
yes,
you a very small example is
mm,
washing our hands. Okay, so we were used to
yeah,
soap and water,
yes,
all right?
yes,
And when we went to school and something was there, we just wiped our hands anyway. But
yes,
now,
yes,
if you look at the mothers today, my God, the
yeah.
amount of business they give to wet wipes is incredible.
I know, I know. I think
Everything has to be wiped.
I know,
I
I know.
mean,
I think COVID messed us up even worse too. Yeah, but kids used to go outside and play in dirt, and some of them ate dirt, and everybody was healthy and fine and happy, and they sweated, and they came home and bathed and ate wonderful dinner. It's heartbreaking. I have said so many times to my kids the games we used to play when I was little. And with all the children from the neighborhood and another neighborhood, and it was just such a it was how you were designed. You were designed to move. I mean, thousands of years ago, before things were developed, that is what we did. We ate healthily because that was what was available. We moved constantly because those of us who had to hunt, had to find something to eat, and that required movement. So it's just a natural way of existing. We woke up when the sun came up, and we went to sleep when the sun went down, and the phones changed all of that, and the priorities kind of became blurred. And I think parents need to remember that they're there um, to guide their children. Um, they're not there to be children's friends, and to be liked by their children. Absolutely, that's wonderful and it's beneficial and it's helpful and necessary. But as a parent, your responsibility is to train a child in a way that they can sustain themselves if you were no longer around. And that means give them the identity that is so solid and foundational and strong that they don't have to wonder about who they are and where they belong, and what it is, and then give them the skills, or direct them to the information where they can gain the skills for life. And so yeah, absolutely,
yeah.
it's
So we're
important.
coming to the end of our webinar, my dear. So I just want you to leave us with three pointers. Most of our viewers are women. So three
Yes.
pointers for the women that can make a change in their families.
Okay. Ladies, you are amazing, and the gifting that you have been designed with is extraordinary. One of the main things that I would encourage you to do is to completely reject fear. A lot of the moms are afraid that they're going to do something wrong, or they're not good enough, or something is going to go wrong. Things will go wrong, and you're wonderful. So anytime fear comes into your life, just remember that you were designed for this and you were made for this, and you're capable of guiding your child and guiding your team or whatever it is that you do as a woman or as a mother. So everything is figure outable. You can figure out everything and anything. There's enough information, there are enough people, and it's okay to ask questions. And finally, remember that your mind is what determines and dictates how the feelings are created in your body, and then your actions will follow. So if your mind, your heart, and your body are aligned, and there is harmony between the three, and there's no dissonance, in other words, you're thinking one thing, but you're feeling something else, and your body's going to remain confused. Then it's going to be a lot easier for you to handle absolutely anything and everything. So make sure that you're um, feeding your body and your heart exactly what you want, and allow it to align with you for success.
Yeah, so wonderfully put, Nino, and so simply explained. Nothing complicated. It's like
Yeah,
common sense, which we know is not common at all. So,
that's right. Exactly.
right. So, coming from you, these very simple, straightforward things that we could adopt in our life, coming from you, a woman who is highly qualified, so experienced, and you've just reduced it to something so simple, right? Life
Yeah,
is simple.
thank you. It is simple. I say we are very complex, but we're not complicated. And I think we make things a lot more difficult and challenging by being distracted with all of the things that aren't not necessary. If we just decide what's important and necessary and eliminate everything else, things suddenly get simplified very quickly.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I know you're sitting there in the States and you made a very special effort to be available.
Such a
So,
pleasure. Such a pleasure,
yes,
Sandy. Thank you for having me. And
it
it's an
was it's
honor. You're an
our pleasure.
inspiration.
Take,
Yeah, I love it.
take care and enjoy the rest of your stay there, and look forward to seeing you soon in Dubai.
Likewise. Likewise.
All
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye bye.
right. All right. God bless. So there you have it. Nino is there to tell you very simple things. And if you come to look at it and you actually listen to this webinar again and again, you'll realize that you can actually bring about a very positive change in your life by doing some things which are very simple. But what I'd like to stress is the fact is how we relate to our children or our young adults, because that is one area that seems to be quite so-called complicated. And she gave very simple uh, pointers on that. And one of them is no judgment. So when your kid doesn't do well at school, your kid is not the first in class, wasn't selected for a competition, or whatever it doesn't really matter. What matters is how you deal with it. Are you still the loving, welcoming, positive, beautiful person who is looking out for their child? That is something you need to keep. Who cares what the other kids are doing, right? And we have to be conscious about this parental pressure, whether it's the grades, whether it's the performance, whether it's anything, because we are the ones who make or break our kids, right? And very important is open communication. This is the one I love a lot because I know for a fact that there is very little open communication. Kids could be scared of what mom or dad will say. Kids could be scared that they will be punished or they will be grounded or they'll have some kind of a negative attitude being thrown at them. So we need to be careful about how we deal with them. And this actually, if you listen carefully to what Nino said, is how we should be dealing with ourselves. Because before we can deal with anybody else, we need to first deal with ourselves. And she gave us a lot of pointers on that. So watch the video, watch it again and again, because every time you watch it, I can guarantee you will learn something more. So, on that lovely note, thank you for watching. But before I go, you know what you're supposed to do, right? You're supposed to subscribe to the Celestial Magazine channel. Not only that, you're supposed to watch the video, share the video, and we would really appreciate your comments. So, till we meet again, thank you so much for watching. God bless and bye for now.